Hello and welcome to Think Watercolour. Today I'm going to be painting this scene of grape pickers amongst the vines on a hot, bright, sunny day. My aim was to capture the dappled light on the track and the vines in a loose style, but to have more detail in the foreground figures to create focus and contrast in the composition. I've sketched the scene in a very loose way, apart from the foreground figures, which I've drawn with quite a bit of detail. This is Saunders Waterford 300-gram rough paper, and I'm going to start with an overall thin wash of lemon yellow. This will dry much lighter and become the lightest light in the finished painting, and I'll let this wash dry before I continue. Okay, that's all completely dry now, and I can start adding the next washes. I've added some sap green to the lemon yellow for the lightest shadows on the vines. I'm using an Escoda Perla No. 2 brush for this, and it's just painting in vague areas of shadow. This is going to dry much lighter. I want the top of this left-hand vine to be much lighter. The right-hand vine is in shadow. The light's coming from top right, so the top of the right-hand vine will be lighter, hence using the same colour. And as I come further down the vine, I'm just adding some jadeite green to darken that mix, keeping the same mix but just adding more colour to it, just creating a darker shadow under the base of the vines. Same on the right hand side, because this right hand side vine is more in shadow. I'll be going much darker as I come down the vine. When you're painting leaves like this, just keep it very loose and the eye will do the rest. Don't try and paint every leaf. Just putting a few darker patches here and there in the upper part of the left-hand vine. Just adding more jadeite green to darken that green. I will be adding some blue to the shadows later to strengthen them, but for the time being I just want to get them blocked in and try and get the values right. For the vines on the other side of the valley, I'm just running some clean water down the right hand side of the vines and just dropping in on the left hand side of each row of vines some of that green mix. It's basically lemon yellow and sap green with a touch of jadeite, just darkening a few areas as I go along. Just keeping the shadow on the left hand side of the vines stronger. The aim is to keep the vines on the other side of the valley lighter when they dry, so that they recede into the distance. This valley goes down to the bottom and then up the other side, and just wanted to try and depict that the fact that these grape pickers in the foreground are standing on an uphill slope. Hopefully the aerial perspective of lighter shades and tones in the background will push that back for the eye once I paint the detail on the foreground figures. That's the whole point of this painting, is to demonstrate that foreground figures, or whatever's in the foreground, if that's in sharp contrast and darker, what's behind it will recede into the distance. Just trying to depict the dappled light on the ground on the tracks between the vines, just keeping it very loose and very vague. Getting slightly darker as they come towards us. The dappled light in the distance will look less distinct, and the idea is the dappled light in the foreground will be much stronger once I add more shadow with some blue later on. Here I'm using a flat brush and some pretty neat Van Dyke brown, almost straight out the palette. Very dry, using a dry brush technique just to get a few speckles of light on those vines, and just putting the branches in, again, as I said, with the flat brush. Just picking up the texture of the paper to get some nice effects. And here I've mixed up some ultramarine blue with a touch of neutral tint just for these shadows, going over the green shadows that I've already painted, just darkening them in the foreground. This will add depth to the painting. These foreground shadows will be much stronger to the eye than the distant shadows, and the shadows underneath the vines will be stronger, especially on the right hand side. And at this stage it looks all a bit ugly and messy, and it's always an ugly stage to a painting. But once I start putting details on these figures, it will all come together. Made a schoolboy error then, didn't mix up enough paint, so I'm going to have to mix up some more of that paint. Always try to mix as much paint as you're going to need in a colour, but it's a fairly easy colour to mix. It's just ultramarine and a touch of neutral tint for these shadows. Even though I've been painting a long time, I sometimes forget to mix up enough paint, so we're all human. For the tractor tracks on either side of the track between the vines, I'm just adding some Van Dyke brown with the side of a rigger just to pick up the texture of the paper, just to suggest that tractor tyres, as they've come up the slope, have churned up some of the soil. This will dry a bit lighter, but just suggests that there's been some disturbance of the soil either side of the track. I can start working on the figures now, and I'm just going to paint the initial washes of the different colours of the clothing that they're wearing, starting with a fairly loose off-white colour for the picker on the left and a light blue for the shirt of the picker on the right. These are the initial washes. These will be the lightest colours on the clothing. So once they're dry, I can add the shadows and the darks, and the figures will start to come together then. For the collection boxes, tubs, whatever you call them, I'm just using cadmium red, just fairly light. And for the shadows on the jeans of the foreground figure on the left, I've just mixed up some ultramarine with a touch of burnt sienna, just to darken it slightly, a little bit grey. I'm just going to use some clean water just to soften the edge of that shadow, so that it follows the curve of the picker's leg. Just adding the shadows to the shirt on the right hand figure. Just brings the painting together, adds volume to and depth to the figures once you start putting these shadows in. Just putting less detail on the distant figure. That distant figure further down the slope is a little bit of a device to help to add scale and depth to the painting, because he's so far down the slope he's much smaller. Just building up the depth of the colours layer by layer on these foreground figures. Don't want to go too dark straight away, so that's a little tip. If you are painting in watercolours and you're new to it and you're not sure about the strength of colour to use, you can always go darker, but it's much more difficult to go lighter. So if you're not sure, paint slightly lighter than you think it needs, and then just add darker colours as you go along and build up the depth that way. The more experience you get, the quicker you'll get at painting these darks in and getting the values right. But if you are a beginner, take your time and build it up layer by layer, slowly but surely. Once you start adding the shadows, the painting really starts to come alive and creates three-dimensionality to the figures and adds depth to the painting too. I'm just darkening the collection tubs with a slightly stronger mix of cadmium red, leaving a few patches of the lighter colour. I've just mixed up a much thicker mix of the cadmium red just to add a little bit of detail on those tubs, just to give them a bit of three-dimensionality, a little bit of shadowing here and there, and just it defines them a bit better. Not going into too much detail. A few bits of tidying up as I've gone along with the camera off, I'm afraid, and I'm pretty much done. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope I've managed to convey that areas of high contrast and detail will appear closer, and areas of lower contrast will appear to recede. I also hope I've managed to capture the heat and brightness of a sunny day when they're picking grapes. If you did find this video useful, do give it a like. It really helps with YouTube to spread the word. If you're not a subscriber, do subscribe and hit the notification bell for future videos. I do aim to post a video maybe once a week or so, but lately it's been every 2 weeks. But I'll try and improve on that. And thanks again for watching.